What's up, Star Wars Unlimited fans? It's Loopy at Late Night Gaming, and I'm here with a very special across the pond content, teaming up with Mark from Unlimited Power. How you doing, Mark?
Very good, thank you. Yourself, dude?
It's a great day when you can talk about Star Wars cards.
Oh, you're not wrong.
And the eyes of Star Wars Unlimited this weekend. I mean, there were store showdowns all around here, but I hear there was a little bit of a convention in the UK.
Oh, just a small one. So over in the US, you've got your Gencon that's been going on for years. In the UK, we've got the UK Games Expo, which takes place over a hotel, all of its function rooms, and approximately 4 aircraft hangar-sized expo halls where we get all the games and the miniatures and the cards and everything for 3 days of glorious nerdery.
So this is basically what Gen Con would be to America, or like Essensfield to Germany, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
exactly right. Yeah, exactly.
All right, and what we're doing today is we're going to do a little bit of a tournament recap, and we're joined by Seb and Mike. You guys placed number 1 and 2 in the 128 person tournament, day 1.
Yep. Hello. Thanks for having me.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you, and thanks for having me as well.
All right, so we wanted to do this. One, I think that it's important to always be looking. Good card players are looking at results and what works, what doesn't work. What deck did you run, Mike?
I ran mono yellow Boba Fett, so double cunning.
Double cunning. My teammate Poem would be proud. And then Zeb, what did you run?
I was on the Blonde Bean for the whole weekend.
And you said Blonde Sabine. I mean, have you?
Yeah, that's.
Have you watched Frank's videos?
Oh, him and Frank have been consorting tightly together on the KTOD Discord for, weeks now?
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that there's a huge community behind this deck, and one of the things that attracted me to playing this deck, because it's a really powerful thing to have preparing into tournaments and getting better at the game.
Yeah, and a shout out to Frank. I did a master class. He's a very interesting personality. Cool guy. Cool deck too. So, and what we want to do with this is we're going to go over kind of the tournament, but then we're also going to go over how to attack a top cut, the different decks you'll see in the set 1 meta. There's still store showdowns happening, and then we have Gen Con right around the corner itself in America. I mean, when you're actually in a top cut here, you want to win. I mean, you don't want to get knocked out, so how to navigate that, which you guys did successfully.
And the expo was very different from many, many tournaments. In the setup for days 1 and day 2 were the first 7 rounds were run pure Swiss, but they were also done best of 1. So you've got to be very careful there with your mulligans. You got to be careful with who you're going into. And only after the top cut was there it then transitioned to a best of 3 with the usual 55-minute rounds.
And you'll find that as you get into tournaments that are trying to complete on a day, it is a little bit different animal. So I'd like your input on best of 1, what different choices you may make. I do think you have to make some different deck choices at times too. So let's go to that. But first, let's talk about the prizing. That's your smiling mugs. What are you holding there?
Holding an event exclusive game map with Shadows of the Galaxy art. So the top 8 each got one of these.
All right. Is that Enfys Nest?
That's the one.
Yeah, it's definitely the one of the things to mention as a highlight of the weekend. I think everyone wanted one.
And the little scribble you'll see there is the handwriting of game developer John Leo, who is also in presence at the UK Games Expo, signing cards and signing mats in this case, as was Jim Cartwright.
Yeah, so Fantasy Flight itself sent a entourage over to...
Yep, delegation of, I think, 3 or 4 people. Yep.
And were they running demos and that kind of thing?
John was there at the demo table. He was talking to fans all day long. He sat down and played a few games with some of the fans as well. They were giving out new event-exclusive Grogu Set 2 cards to every participant of the tournament and everybody who took part in a demo that day. So there were a lot of Grogus given out.
All right. So, Mike and Zeb, what are you going to do with your mat?
I'm denied about this, and I have seen some already put up for sale, but I'm going to keep mine. I don't think I'm going to win many tournaments of card games, so quite a nice reminder I was saying it's only my second playmat, so if I ever start playing these games with my kids at some point, I now have 2 playmats, so we can actually use them.
All right,
So I'm going to keep it.
what about you, Seb?
Yeah, I'm definitely finding it very hard to part with it, and it very much biased towards keeping it. I think as soon as I saw it in person, I was like, I cannot give it away.
Yep, and it's like that, right? So I mean, there's only what 8 times 3, so 24 of these that will
Yep.
get released. They'll go for hundreds of dollars on the secondary market, I'm sure. I mean, if you can find somebody to sell them, but I mean, either you can use it to fund your tournament, by selling it. There's plenty of card players that do exactly that to fund their travel and go to more stuff. It's also entirely great to just use it as a flex.
Oh yeah, if you sit down against someone who knows what it is, and it's like, yeah, I've got one of these.
Yeah, we mentioned KTOD, I mean, you'll see Bobby Sapphire play. It's usually on the Gencon Mortis mat from Destiny. That was the #1 exclusive. He's got the one champion, I believe. And it's worth quite a bit.
Absolutely.
All right, so this little fellow is given out too?
Yep. Every participant on all 3 days of the 128 player tournaments got given one of these. And everybody at the show who took part in a demo got given one of these as a thanks for taking part in the demo as well. So these are now out and about.
Yeah, and I'd encourage people. I think that Fantasy Flight does an excellent job with their promotion and kind of pushing swag out, to people. But if there's something like a Gen Con or a big convention and you know that there's going to be a booth for Star Wars Unlimited, there's probably going to be an opportunity to get swag. In fact,
I'm fairly sure Gen Con's already advertised that they'll be giving this away at their event there.
And I'm actually pulling right here. If you see that, that's actually the hyperspace Vader that came from before release.
Oh yeah.
That looks like there, and that's actually what I rung because there's not a showcase Vader yet. I mean, I would love to see a showcase of Vader and Luke.
Oh, they've got to have made one, right?
As like a top 8 card,
Or the first prize for the planetaries next year or something. God knows.
It might be, but that would be worth. I mean, if it was limited to like top 8 of a giant tournament like that, it'd probably be worth hundreds, if not maybe into 4 figures. All right, so this is the path. You're Mike O and Sebastian B. So you guys played each other in the finals?
Yes, we did.
All right, and I don't think Boba Yellow's what Agro wants to see. Usually.
No.
Yeah.
They'd rather.
I think you beat one, didn't you?
Yeah. I faced three Boba Yellow decks on the day. Mike was the third one. Unfortunately, I couldn't keep up with the record and had to give it away.
All right. Well, very good. I'm interested in that. I mean, if you're beating Boba with Sabine, that's a good thing. Vader would rather see Boba, absolutely, than Sabine.
So, what tricks do you use to beat Boba then, Seb?
I think it's a mixture of choosing the lines that have highest probability of winning, and also depending a bit on the opponent's draw and just waiting for those opportunities to come. And when they come, grab them because they don't come very often.
Right. Yeah. No. It's hard to get an in on tempo, which I mean I think Boba Yellow's borders on being an aggro deck itself, but it's certainly got some tempo aspects with cunning, and he's just trying to find an opening to beat you in punch damage, and it can punch damage harder than any other deck, I think. If you let it have anything down.
And Mike, how was facing Seb's Blonde Sabine?
It was okay. I think I got the cards I needed in the first game. If I'm playing aggro and I see cunning in my hand, I'm happy, and I know that I should be able to win. Or it's up to me. And then we might touch on it later, but in the second game, Seb sort of missed the turn 1 play. It's very hard to catch up against Boba Yellow from there as a Sabine deck. So those games went quite smoothly. I had the tools I needed at the right times.
And them
are
the beats sometimes. I mean, if he's using the Blonde Sabine list, you'd think it's very rare to mulligan and miss. But,
You'd be surprised. I unfortunately that happened a lot throughout the day. In terms of taking a risk with mulligan and actually finding yourself with a much worse hand than you had before, and it's one of the things that is very penalizing in a best of one that it's worth taking a point on, because if you've got a playable hand, but maybe not a perfect one, or something that you're not happy with, but it's playable, really consider keeping it because it could be worse. And in the best of one, you don't get a chance to recoup your losses.
All right, and Mark, tell us about this. I mean, it's a little bit
So-
hard, but this is the representation of the leaders on day one.
Yeah, so what we're looking at here is on day one, it was a 128 player tournament. 7 either didn't show or could make it for one reason or another. This is a deck representation based on leaders for day one. So 25% of the field were running Boba Fett in one colour or other, and a further 15% of the field were running Sabine. So you can see a very clear bias there.
Right. Followed by Vader.
Yep.
And, Luke at number 5, which is interesting.
Yep.
Han at number 6.
Han lower than Luke, considering his performance. He's been doing extremely well here in the UK for the last 4 or 5 weeks. I'd have thought to see more Hans, but that kind of surprised me there a bit.
Though Luke didn't represent that well, at least on day one, as I see that there weren't any in the top cut and 40%.
No, 40% win rate obviously doesn't do too well for it. The only one, I think, no, 2 decks, 3 leaders even that did lower than that. We had a 38% win rate on Tarkin, 35% on Grand Inquisitor, and 28% win rate on Thrawn down there at the bottom.
Yep, and cheers to the brave soul who brought IG88. Was it red or green? Do you know?
I think it was a mono red IG88, and I only know that because Seb faced them on day 2.
What was that? Tell me about that deck. We don't have a slide for it.
So I think the person that I faced on day 2 wasn't running it on day 1, so it might have been a different one. But I think it was a particularly interesting list, sort of taking advantage of the quite aggressive units that red and villain cards offer to you, and using aggression and Ruthless Raider to really put aggressive board state. So from the Blonde Sabine perspective, going second, it was quite tough because they can be aggressive and also remove your units at the same time, and that's the bit that was quite tricky to navigate.
And I think that's probably is tough because Villain Red does have very good space, especially anti-space space, because it's got Interceptor and it's got Ruthless
Yeah.
Raider, which was spoiled on our show. That's actually the late night gaming chip to a lot of Americans, but no, it's good. I'd love to see somebody running IG. The 57% IG88 win percentage is probably not representative of if you had a whole bunch of people of not skill, but I imagine that guy knew how to pilot it in and out and was.
Oh yeah, the one guy out of 121 players.
Right.
Yeah, props to him.
Yeah. All right, and this is the final standings. You won
Yep.
on Boba yellow. You were on Sabine. Ellis was Sabine green.
Ellis was Sabine green. Chris Shiv ran Boba yellow. Big O Notation also ran Boba yellow. Straw Sword ran Boba yellow. Django Bob Jr. ran Boba green, breaking the mold there. And Scrub Games ran Vader blue.
All right, so let's get to the meat. Mike, tell us about your list. What's Boba
Winning
yellow?
list, day 1.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, a lot of the stuff is fairly common, Boba yellow and stuff. So I'll try and focus on the main differences. So the first sort of difference in my list is I split the turn 1 plays between space and ground. So I've got the Outer Rim Headhunters added in alongside the Viper Probe Droid. And the main reason for that is just try to not give Super Laser Technician good targets. So if I'm coming up against any Super Laser Tech deck, I just don't want to play a Viper Probe Droid. It gives it something to kill, and then they ramp, and then it's just it gives them too much of an advantage, right?
It's a great point, Mike, and I think it goes to any Villain Green. I mean, Villain Green will be running Super Laser Tech.
Yeah. So
it also applies to
so
any 2 health unit, right? Because Viper Probe Droid can be good against the Sabine matchups because it hits back for 3. But if your deck has a 2 health 1-drop on the ground, I mean, be careful because you're giving them the potential to ramp and destroy a unit at the same time.
Yeah. So I like that as a sort of how I build my deck anyway. But in best of 1, it's particularly helpful because you just don't know what's going to come up, and you want to have some options. I suppose the other choices in the deck are I picked Syndicate Lackeys over Bosk because I just find that there's some things with 5 health that I like to be able to kill, like Boba Fett unit, Sabine leader, and then even some other things like Gideon Hask. There's just a few things with 5 health that's just useful to be able to take off the board. And yeah, obviously Fire Sprays, Cunning, Bodhi Rook, Cantina Bouncer. Cantina Bouncer might have been my sort of MVP of the day. I saw it a lot, and every time I was happy to use it. And then yeah, the last ones are sort of Change of Heart. I really like that main deck. It really helps get over the line in a few matchups. Just when you've got near lethal damage on the board, or your opponent's also like got quite a lot on, just flipping one unit over can just basically give you the game if used at the right moment. And then I'd play Snapshot Reflexes instead of Shoot First. Again, it's a bit of a very similar card, but I like the fact that I can just use it sometimes as an extra 1 damage, and it leaves a slightly bigger body behind that's harder to remove. Yeah,
Is there
so
a
those are the
particular
main sort of
unit you'd
interesting
prefer
things.
to use that on, or would you just use it on any unit of opportunity at the time?
So the first reason I brought it into the deck was actually to put it on Boba Leader to take it out of Steadfast Battalion range. Back when Boba Green was the meta menace. Otherwise, again, it can take Gamma Guards up to 5 health, so out of Bosk range. And I had one game during the day where I put it on a Cartel Spacer, and that Cartel Spacer was able to kill an A-Wing, a Red 3, and still be on the board and hitting them for free. So yeah, it comes in useful sometimes.
My son calls the Spacer a space taco because it kind of resembles that. But
yeah,
that's a good point though too. I mean, particularly Green Sabine. Several of the ships on Blonde Sabine too have 3 health. I mean, a Spacer with that snapshot all of a sudden is a problem.
Yeah, exactly. If you play Shoot First instead and you kill an A-Wing, they could ECL in a Red 3, remove it, stay alive. But when it's got 3 power, they can't do that. It's just protecting the space lane.
Yep. I think you see a lot of control players using Devotion in a similar capacity on like an Inferno 4.
Oh yeah.
To counter hero aggro. But that's a good point as far as snapshot versus there.
Or on a restored X-Wing on a hero deck for much the same sort of purpose.
Right. I was going to ask you before, how often are you drawing Cunning and you're not happy?
Never. Or if I've got 2 in hand and then I draw the 3rd, it's like, well, I didn't need this. That very rarely happens.
Probably.
Yeah.
It's a great card, and I think Poem would agree with you that Cantina Bouncer is often the next best card in the deck after Cunning.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like much, but it's just so good. It's so good in nearly every matchup. And because it synergizes with Boba's ability, it's always really good to play.
All right. You're up, Seb.
Cool. So
the blonde list. Chewbacca in an aggro deck? You're nuts.
Who would ever do such a thing? Oh, it's unprecedented.
Yeah, I think that game has secured my space in the final. That was the game winner for the aggro mirror with Green Sabine. I was facing a buffed unit with 5 attack, which was about to hit me for game, and being able to drop a Chewbacca has really turned the tables around. So that was a pivotal card in the deck to win me one game that when it was needed. Sorry, Karen.
What other choices did you make? Bringing this list.
So I think the list is generally standard across the sort of deck list that people were running with Blonde Sabine. I think the main considerations were around how do I make this deck perform best in a best of 1 context. So initial decision was, do I want a consistency with trying to run 3 of each card that I want and maximizing the sort of consistency, or do I want a toolbox and being able to choose the cards that I need in given situations, and I think I leaned towards consistency, so trying to run 3 offs of the main cards, and really making sure that I do see those cards that I want to see. And the other main consideration was to choose cards that play into multiple matchups as much as possible, and this was particularly around Rogue Operative instead of Ezra. I felt like Rogue was very helpful against matchups that I was particularly struggling against, so the Saboteur was very, very important. To, for example, trade with Shielded Iden. The 4 attack with the Raid 2 means that he was able to threat 7 health leaders, so being able to put that on the turn before the Krennic or Boba or other 7 health leaders flip, it was just something that the opponent had to be considerate of, because with the surprise strike that was able to trade with those leaders efficiently. Another card that is probably worth mentioning is Bamboozle. So the main consideration was around Bamboozle or Spark of Rebellion. And I felt like Bamboozle was playing into multiple matchups here for me. So in the aggro, it was able to control the tempo or debuff the wing leader play from my opponent. Into Han, he was able to stop that double ramp turn. Into Boba, especially when they remove the unit, being able to tap Boba leader means that they might not maximize their resources on the pivotal turn. So it just means that card was very, very flexible in how it can be played, and also it's another surprising cunning sort of effect where you can play it for free. So sometimes you could be tapped out, opponent thinks that they can do whatever they want, and suddenly it can be played.
Did you do that very often?
So it hasn't turned out to happen during this tournament, but in the previous tournament, it was also a game swinging card where I was playing against a green Sabine, and I was able to take myself out of lethal damage by tapping a unit before claiming initiative.
As a guy that plays a lot of Vader and Turret, you can leave those bamboozles at home. As far as
Can't imagine why.
It's not real fun to put a saber on and then get bamboozled. But it's got beautiful art, I'll tell you what.
Oh yeah, that's legendary art right there.
Well, actually, before we get to that, so this was something that you both knew would be best of 1 through Swiss going in.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about any thinking or changes or tweaks to the deck you might have made because of that?
So I think for me, it was just I was trying to make sure my deck was just consistent. And for Boba Yellow to get to be consistent, you need to be playing units early in the game. So I really wanted to keep the change of hearts in to give myself options, because they might be critical, they might not be. So I actually ended up cutting out a waylay just to reduce my events a little bit. So I just had slightly more consistent, drawing
But you
of
left
units.
in 3 no good to me deads as well, though.
Yeah, so No Good to Me Dead is one of those cards that in the matchups it matters. It's like the best card, like against Boba and Han, and then the other matchups, less so. So, but the matchups where you want it, you need it there. So I made sure to keep it, and I cut the waylays because you've already got Cantina Bouncer, you've already got Cunning. I don't need 9 bounce effects. I can try and reduce it. So it was trying to. I basically made myself quite a bit more mid-rangey, that I could play a bit better into a few more decks, and I lent on the fact that it's quite good against aggro, so I didn't worry too much about putting anti-aggro tech in the main deck.
More of a take-all-comers approach than like a pre-boarding against a particular deck type.
Okay, what about you?
Exactly.
What about you, Seb? So going into a best of 1, did you tweak this in any way?
So I think the main consideration was consistency, as I mentioned before. So I did play with the 1-drops quite a bit. So I've got 3 Spec 4s and 2 R2. I was thinking about 2 Spec 4s, maybe 3 R2s. There was a bit of a discussion going on there how to make sure that I'm consistently being able to drop good units on turn 2 and 3, and being able to include 5 1-cost units also plays well into hard control decks where with layer we are able to drop 2 units in turn 1, or potentially drop a 1-cost and 2-cost in turn 2, just to be able to outfast the fact that they can remove 1 unit a turn for the first few turns. So I think that was the other consideration that went into this deck.
Okay, and you actually answered the question I was going to ask too. I mean, are you playing sometimes 2 1-drops on turn 1 and then pinging and just kind of giving the initiative to control?
Yeah, I think that's probably the ideal play against blue control, double blue control decks. I think you have to be careful with green blue control where they can drop a Death Trooper and basically kill your Spec Force with the effect, and that usually is quite a big tempo swing. So really mindful of the cards that your opponent can run, and what if you've got the guarantee that you can attack with that unit and it doesn't trade too easily for your opponent, then I think that's a good play.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point too. The blue, I mean, if it's just blue or just blue red, I mean, it's basically 1-to-1 removal. I mean, barrage is in green. I mean, sometimes that's the one that can go wide as far as removal goes. But if you know all they have is 1-to-1 because they're in, just blue, sometimes wide is better than.
Or even blue-red for a similar reason. Yeah.
I think the other thing to think about when you're playing against blue-red control is that they can play 4-stroke on first turn, which can be quite a big swing for them. So being able to drop a space unit is quite good as well against that, just to make sure that they can't utilize that card early on.
Yep, 4-stroke can't hit vehicles, which Sabine players should absolutely know and rely on. All right, so let's talk about matchups. I think the second part of this, what I really want to hear from you guys, is how you attack each of these decks. So this is a top 8 deck that was a Boba ECL.
So this was Mike. This was your or your quarterfinal game.
Yeah, it's my quarterfinal. Yeah, the Boba Green is the deck that scared me away from Boba Yellow the most. So I probably worked on or thought about the most. And as I said earlier, don't give them easy laser tech targets. If they do play laser tech, disrupt it if you can, like exhausting it, bouncing it, and yeah, that's what you want to do at the start of the game.
So I shamelessly copied your deck on day 2, and I had great fun against a Palpatine ramp deck, waylaying his super laser technician 2 turns in a row. He did not like that. That did not go down well.
Yeah, I mean, the other joyful thing is sometimes getting a Bodhi Rook and sniping a resupply, which I did manage to do in the first game of this. Because, what Boba Green has an advantage is if it can ramp and get to Boba earlier, if it can Steadfast Battalion your leader, and if it can Overwhelming Barrage. So, effectively, those are the 3 things you work around. Disrupt their ramp. Don't run into Steadfast Battalion. So try and bait out ECL if you can. Or just make sure, or get your Boba out first before their Boba, and try to take out any good overwhelming barrage sort of units as quick as possible. So I've been known, if they've ambushed in with boss, kill something, even though it's damaged, I've been known to bounce it straight back with Cantina Bouncer, because like the overwhelming barrage on their boss, that's 8 damage with boss stability. Like, I just can't let that happen. And get it back off the board.
When naturally people might be afraid of bouncing Bosk because they could just replay him and ambush him again.
But I'm kind of unworried because he's not going to kill Bouncer with his 4 attack. So, those are the things you just try to play around. And, try and No Good To Me Dead, their Boba Fett leader, to slow down their resource refresh. And then, just be aggro. That's about it, really. It's very like each turn you just have to think through what's my threat from them, and then just see where you can go with it.
All right, how are you dealing with Boba Green?
So over the time of testing, I found that Blunt Speed was favorable into Green Boba, and there are a few few lines that you can exploit to create that edge against it. I think the good news is that they are on a 25 health base, which is much easier to get to than 30. So that's the first thing that really makes a difference. But also that they don't have too many responses in space, so being able to dominate this game through space is the main line of attack. There are a few things you have to play around, so you really don't want to put an A-wing on your turn 1 because that can quite easily play into an ECL by a 7 fleet defender, which can keep the shield on, so it's much harder to then clear the space after that play. So ideal play would be to put an X-wing and then have a Falcon or a gunship to clear that space lane in the later turns. So that's the sort of the easiest way of attack. I think if you have got the initiative, then utilizing Sabine Wren unit is actually quite good as well, because you can limit the plays that the Boba player can do on their first turn. Because of her effect ping, she can trade with she can kill Greedo and a Crafty Smuggler quite efficiently if you wanted to do that. I think trying to bait out the ECL as quickly as possible is also quite a big thing. So if you can put an X-wing, then you can expect a Star Viper or a 7 fleet defender coming in that space lane, and just means that you've got one less thing to worry late in the game.
And I think that sometimes Frank will advocate like playing out the Alliance X-wing, drawing out the ECL of the Viper, and then playing the Red 3 or the A-wing.
Yeah,
so
and
might be able to protect.
And if you've done that first part of the matchup, then the next thing I usually try to work around and worry about is the overwhelming barrage. So making sure that they don't have a good target for overwhelming barrage to kill your space unit. So I would often like to see rogue operative on the field, because then you can threaten the Boba flip for the leader, but also if they're playing a Morgan guards, you can clear that space as well, which means that they don't have a first action on the F5 resource turn to play overwhelming barrage and maybe take out 1 or 2 ships in the space lane.
All right, let's talk about Boba Yellow. It's a very represented deck. I mean, how are you attacking the Mirror Mech?
Painfully. This was the biggest struggle of the day, I think. So the person I played in the semi-final actually beat me round 1 of Swiss. And yeah, it's quite informative, because you both kind of play Bodhi Rook, take each other's cunnings. And then even if you do manage to play cunning, you're probably not able to put +4 on anything, because it's going to get exhausted or bounced. So it's very tentative.
Are you using the discard?
As a last resort, maybe, if there's nothing better to do. Or yeah, if you've got nothing better to do, I think it can be useful. It depends at what point. If you've already bounced a few things, the random discard's not very valuable because they've got a big hand. If they've been getting tempo plays and their hand is a bit small, then the random discard would be a lot more powerful. So it really depends on the state of the game. I think what we found in these mirror matches was No Good to Me Dead is absolutely amazing on both Boba Leader and Fire Spray. Round 1 of the semi-final, I thought I had the game. He No Good to Me Dead did my Fire Spray as I played it, and the damage he saved basically put him within range of lethal, and then I couldn't do anything. So I think what we ended up finding was No Good to Me Dead is amazing, and also Surprise Strike, because Surprise Strike is the one thing your opponent can't mess with. So the boost damage makes such a big difference, because you want to be the first person to get to the 22, 23 damage range, because from there, your opponent basically has to be on the defensive, because they're kind of snookered, because you might be able to just do 7 in 1 hit. So whoever gets to that kind of threshold first typically, wins, because the other person has to suddenly go right on the defensive and not put their damage in, and then they fall further behind.
All right. What do you think, Seb? Attacking Boba Yellow.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the worst matchups for Blunt Bean. I think this comes down to opponent drawing. I think the two key cards that I don't want my opponent drawing is the Cunning and the Seven Fleet Defender. If those cards are not seen, I think that's a winnable game. If they see one or two Cunnings and start to put units in the space lane, then it becomes a very, very difficult game, and often feels like there's not much you can do, which is how I felt in the final against Mike. um, but I think I think it's exploiting that weakness of space units, and just trying to dominate that lane as much as possible. And the other thing to play around is Cunning, so trying to drop multiple units and go as wide as possible is what I found to be successful in the previous games. So dropping 2-3 ships on 5 resource turn, or sorry, 2 ships and maybe R2 on 5 resource turn, and plays like that means that if you've got more than 3 units, then you're likely to be able to attack with at least one of them, because Cunning can only sort of deal with 3 at a maximum. So when you get to that range late game where you're looking at applying your surprise strikes and finishes, you really want that unit to be able to attack at least once. So yeah, going wide and hoping that they don't draw Cunning and Seven Fleet Defender.
All right, Sabine Green, what's your advice for when you see this deck? How do you attack it?
Seb, this was your semi-final, so you can go first.
Yeah, so I think the best play that they can take is they can ECL your turn 1 play and have a unit being left behind. So playing a wing, playing Sabine Run unit can often get traded by their units using ECL. So that's something that usually puts you on the back foot from the beginning of the game. And I often take the control seat in that matchup, trying to slow them down as much as possible, trading units efficiently, and ideally not giving them a good target for ECL if I can. So playing R2 potentially, which works quite well with a fleet lieutenant on turn 3 if they played another unit. So you can buff up your R2 trade with their units, and hopefully R2 can stay and build that sort of presence whilst trading efficiently. Not sure what else comes to mind immediately. Yeah, so definitely control matchup. I think the way I try to play it is making sure that I have the same health remaining on my base as they do, but obviously they've got 5 less. So if I've got 10 damage, then making sure that they have 5 damage, so I'm not losing that race, but also trying to control and slow them down. So I think the way I try to play is that they can't finish the game on the 5 resource turn, and making sure that I'm playing and choosing my action so that I can finish the game with the first action on turn 6, or being in an advantage position to be able to finish the game with least actions than my opponent.
So the Ewing included in this deck isn't going to have been a factor for your match in the slightest.
No, it never gets to that really. It's too slow. I think the Ewing is further matchups in that deck list.
All right, what's your plan of attack, Mike?
Yeah, so I think I'm quite cautious actually when I play against aggro as a Boba Yellow. Some people might like to be try to race it a little bit more, but I never want to let it get a Rebel Assault off. Is basically my game plan in my head. Is that don't let it get any sort of value that way. So whenever I'm starting it, I'm always looking for what's my answer in both lanes. 7 Fleet Defender is, of course, what I'm looking for in space, because it's a bit slow to get out there, but once it's there, it's killing everything. And again, on the ground, what have I got? Hopefully I've got a Viper Pro Joy to trade or kill something and stay alive on the ground. So I'm very much trying to get something in both lanes in the first 2 rounds. And then play a Cunning or play a couple of events in the 3rd round to slow them down or remove stuff, and hopefully aim for them to have at most 2 things on the board, but by the time it comes to the Boba turn, hopefully 1 thing. So that the start of the Boba turn is bounce or exhaust something, and then just go from there. So I take it quite cautiously.
Playing your
so-
deck, one of the things I learned quickly was I needed to save a Waylay or a Cunning for the K2SO quite hard.
Yeah. If they're going to play a K2SO without ECL, you just want to bounce that. That's if you get that. If you manage to bounce it, it's probably you've won the game at that point. And of course, be aware of Steadfast Battalion. I think I did have a game at some point in the day where I used Syndicate Lackeys to remove Sabine at the start of the Boba turn because they had ECL live, and I was like, I just need it gone. It's not going to trigger Boba, but it's worth having the safety.
And
So yeah, I pretty much.
I imagine you're trying to kill Sabine Leader, not no good to me dead her.
I'm actually quite happy to leave Sabine Leader alive because you can exhaust her with Cartel Spacer. That was one of my go-to moves at the start of the 5 resource turn. Basically, leave Sabine alive, get everything else removed, exhaust it at the start of the turn, and then just do the Boba flip turn stuff and take over the board. And then if they've got Sabine and you've got 3-4 units attacking base, you don't really mind. And if you defeat Sabine when you don't need to, then it just goes back to pinging you. So it depends. If I'm protecting a Steadfast, then it's a priority. If I'm not,
that's what I was getting at. I mean, Steadfast and Negredo probably doesn't feel real good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. If Steadfast is live with ECL, I'm removing Sabine. If not, I'm worrying about Red 3 or K2SO a lot more. So yeah, you just go from there. And yeah, try to don't let them get off a Rebel Assault, because you can think you can have their game under control, you can be catching up in damage, but if you've let them get units on and they get a Rebel Assault, suddenly you're potentially within 4 cores range. So I play it very cautiously. But yeah, it tends to be over by the end of the 6th resource turn.
Yeah, the Green Beam players probably say the exact same thing in reverse about Cunning. You got to not let get hit by a +4, on the Cunning with your losing your turn.
And just on that comment about killing Sabine Leader, I'm often surprised that people are so aggressively trying to kill her instead of another unit with free attack, because that means that they put the leader back into the position where I can ping with her and I can still attack with the free attack unit. So it means that I can potentially deal 4 damage instead of 3 now, if the other unit still stays alive.
I think it's very relevant as to whether ECL is up or down. I mean, that's
yeah.
That matters.
I tend to block Sabine with Gamma Guards as well. She's not a saboteur, so it's like you're stuck then.
So this was mostly from the perspective of Sabine yellow player, which doesn't have ECL, and it still sort of the Sabine leader seems to be the one that's been dealt with first instead of other units.
I suppose it looks bigger.
It is the leader. I mean, I think it's the same way. Going to Mike's point, if I'm playing Vader, I mean, how much I care about Sabine very directly relates to whether it's green for one. I mean, yellow can't do that. Yellow, I'm very focused on always having a space answer because I assume that's where the real threat is coming. Green Sabine, I mean, you just need to be conscious of that 7 overwhelm coming in because that's not something you can typically afford to take the hit and then win. All right, so here's Avenger Raver, George and Gee's baby, or at least a variant of it. How are you attacking a hard control? This is one of the top 8 from day 1. Mark?
That's right.
Yeah, so I think I was lucky to avoid it. Not that it's necessarily that it's not unwinnable. It's just definitely not an easy game to play against as Boba Yellow, because you just want to go wide. Really, you want to slow down their 1-for-1 removal by having things on the board. So yeah, you try and go wide as much as possible. Try and make Charlton too risky to play. So if they play Lieutenant Charlton, you might bounce it with a waylay or something. And then if they want to try playing it again the next turn, they're taking a huge risk because it could get bounced again, like a Cantina bouncer. So you kind of want to make that a bit of a risky play for them. And if you can do that, then yeah, go wide, attack base as much as possible. Sideboard in the confiscates to get rid of entrenched, and hope, I think.
So a reason why you didn't have to face this in the top 8 is because it was beaten by the Sabine Green deck we just looked at.
Yeah.
What's your game plan, Seb? Seeing, let's just talk about Avenger Vader, villain blue red. I think that's the most common villain blue red control, hard control.
Yes, I
Hiding
think.
can work.
Oh, you love villain blue red, don't you?
Yeah, unfortunately, this deck is causing me the most problems, and potentially one of the reasons why I might consider not playing Blonde Sabine if this deck dominates the meta. So all the double blue control decks and double red controls do cause me a headache.
All right.
I think that the game plan there is to kind of deal with the early threats that can really slow you down. So the Charlton and the Templar Shellcraft are very annoying Sentinel cards that need an answer. So that's sort of a reason for running 3 Spec Force soldiers. Also being able to drop 2 units first turn and then hopefully attacking with at least 1 unit a turn for the first 3-4 turns is probably something that is the ideal game plan. I think Bamboozle plays a significant role in this matchup as well, being able to play Bamboozle on Charlton and being able to flip Sabine and attack and trade him away is also quite a big play if you can line the cans up. But I think once you get into the vigilance range, that's when things get very difficult. So if you haven't dealt enough damage early on, the game really slows down, and it feels like the blood's dripping away, and the game just feels like
And then all of a sudden you're looking at an Avenger, and then
Yeah.
that's probably not what you want to see.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping Bodhi Rook can take out Vigilances, because if you get that 5 healing, you're just like, all that work for 2 or 3 turns is gone.
Yeah.
And then hopefully
And I
change of heart and Avenger or something.
All right.
Yeah.
Hopefully something like that.
So neither.
I think that's also where the Spark of Rebellion can come in. But the problem with it early turns is that you're trading tempo on board against potentially removing a threat in opponent's hands. So I've never felt like I've benefited from that play. Usually try to play on turn with 4 resources, so you can drop a unit and also play Spark of Rebellion, so at least you're boarding some board presence. But yeah, it's a difficult one, and I don't think I have an answer fully yet. Usually trying to maximize the damage I can put each turn, and prioritizing building a wide board, and hoping that you don't see 2 or 3 vigilances and trying to push that final damage through.
That sounds a lot to me like the same way a mid-range player would say, never play resupply against an aggro deck. Just waste a turn.
I board out resupply against Sabine for sure. Speaking of Vader Green, which I actually ran this to a runner-up at a showdown yesterday. Very different list than this gentleman's. Neither of you had to play this. This is what, was it day 3?
That's right. This is a winning list from day 3.
Which was all Swiss and best of 1.
It was all Swiss best of 3. There was no top cut. So 2 decks went 6-0, and this was the one that just edged out the other one, which was a Palpatine Blue.
Okay, so talk about the game plan into Villain Green Red. I think it's usually Vader, but if you see an Inquisitor Green, it's going to have the same game plan, I imagine.
Yes, I think this is kind of, you take the classic Boba Yellow game plan here of be aggro, have an amazing Boba turn, and really try and push that damage just before Vader comes out, and again try and disrupt the laser techs if you can by bouncing them. So I think I played one of these in my Swiss best of 1, and I think he got a resupply at some point, and then I was at 5 resources, he was at 6. He played a laser tech. He could have pinged it to kill it and get Vader out at the same time Boba did. But I bounced it using Cantina Bouncer, my favourite card. And then, he plays it again. He doesn't have the spare resource to ping it. So just try and delay the ramp to make sure you get at least one turn of Boba before Vader's coming out, and it puts them on the back foot, because if you look through the deck, there's this deck's not doing much at 3, 4, 5, even 6 resources. Just not got that. The unit power is not the same as Boba Yellow in those turns.
Yeah.
So you just need to get a big advantage in those turns, and then hope to see it out from there.
Yeah, no, there's different ways to build this deck. This is a very, very top-heavy one. What do you think, Seb? What about villain green red? I should mention Tarkin red is also a thing that you can see.
Yeah, I've not faced this matchup particularly very often. Only played a few games. I think probably still trying to push the game through space and trying to be very aggressive. There's a few roadblocks that you need to think about. So sometimes you see your Rallen being played in the main deck, so he can heal quite a lot. So potentially thinking about dealing with him to make sure that he doesn't slow you down enough. But then also 4 health ships, so Falcon and the gunship can play a big role against the Interceptor to make sure that they can't trade your unit away quite quickly. I think it's just sort of looking for playing your cards most optimally to deal as much damage as possible, and let them worry about trying to stop you.
All right, Han Green. This is a well-represented deck. Why don't we start with Mike? What are you looking to do to tackle this?
I go with the approach of try and win the ground arena in the early game. If you can, you normally can, because of the Viper Probe trades up into Echo Base Defender. They might play a resupply, so you might get ahead on board. So you just try and get some value early game on ground, so that effectively Boba's quite protected, and their Han flip turn is massively threatened, because they're either worried about a surprise strike killing him in one hit, or they're worried about no good to me dead. So you effectively threaten Han so much that they probably don't deploy him, and then typically they will then do the Han ability to go up to 7 resource and do their U-Wing or Han Solo or whatever. But hopefully by that point you've had your Boba turn, you've advanced your board enough that they're just trying to catch up. And then as they catch up, you play Fire Spray. They might play Bright Hope, but blow through it with a snapshot or a shoot first, and they're constantly on the defensive at that point. If you let them get the ground arena, there's no way back, because they've got Han Solo unit, and which you can't really kill, and they can even act bar in to just remove anything you've got if they've got a few units there. So you need to basically battle for the ground arena early, I think.
What are your thoughts, Seb?
I must admit, this is one of the most difficult matchups that I've faced with Blondsbean. It's a very difficult one, because if Han Green draws the cards that they need, then it feels very unwinnable. They've got quite a few things that respond to your cards very well. So you've got Millennium Falcon, which can kill your turn 1 drop in the space if they use the Han ability. They've got Bright Hope, which takes away 6 damage. Can trade with your units if you have to attack into it multiple times. So it's a big roadblock, especially And then also in the ground arena, they've got Echo Base Defender, which is easy to deal with, and also be mindful of Treacherous. So these are the sort of cards that I usually try to work around and figure out what my opponent might have. I think if I don't know what to do, I'm going to try to win the ground space early on, and then trying to switch to space to push that final damage. But you often want to wait out Han's player, turn 1 play, and see if they tap use Han's ability, and see which at the time when they've done it, they committed to deploying a 3-cost unit. So if you see a space that you want to lane dodge to the ground, and if they drop a ground unit, you want to dodge it into space. So there's a bit of playing around what your opponent's going to do in the first turn, and if you're not doing that, then going ground and pushing through there. So Spec Force plays a big role in this matchup. I do like to see Rogue Operative as well. And then also layers and bamboozle are very, very crucial to make sure that you slow down Han and not allow him to double ramp into Han unit or U-wing, because that can be devastating.
All right, I don't think there was a top one with turret, so I just threw up my turret deck to represent it. But it was a matchup you saw at the tournament.
Yes, that's right. So I played turret twice in the first round and my last round. It should be a relatively good matchup, but sometimes the way the cards line up, it can go very variable, especially with the amount of healing that turret gets. So there's quite a few things to be mindful of, and this is another matchup where I really like Rogue Operative because he can trade with Yoda. So that's quite an important card to get off the board as soon as you can, because he can heal a lot of damage away and then slow you down enough, and then you've got a lot of cards in the mid to late game which heal a lot as well. So very much pressure on being very aggressive and being mindful of some synergy between rebel cards in turret as well. So I think the restore arc can be used by fleet lieutenants to kill your space unit and things like that. So just be mindful of the cards that and plays that turret player can do to punish you if you're not sure about the lines.
I'd imagine if I was running turret, I'd be terrified of bamboozle.
I've not played this matchup that frequently. I think the game is usually I've not really had to deal with a turret that was really buffed up. I think the effort from the turret players was usually to play other cards, but yeah, definitely bamboozle can be a response to any upgrades that you see and trying to prevent any damage being done to you. And it's probably also worth noting that turret can be very aggressive as well. So if you let him to aggro you, then he can become quite a difficult race.
What are your thoughts, Mike? I'm sure it.
Yeah, so I haven't played against it that much. I have actually played Turret Red quite a lot. It's probably maybe my second favourite deck. So I think the
Mine
kind of
too.
the colour, yeah, the colours and the units are things that look like they usually get eaten up by Boba Yellow, because there's a lot of things that they come down on the board and then you need to wait, and then they do something like Kanan, K2. It's really susceptible to bounce effects, so you really want to focus on that kind of tempo bounce game plan as ever, really. And you're definitely the aggro player as the Boba Yellow, and I think you probably want to aim to disrupt their turret big turn, which is at the same time as your Boba big turn. So I think you want to aim to have the better flip turn, no good to be dead turret or something like that, and get a bit of an advantage that way. Probably, just try to delay turret whilst also bouncing the board and pushing damage that way. Hope they play Obi-Wan and then play Cunning to bounce him and put +4 on something. That is the dream when you have Cunning in hand.
Turret players do not play Obi-Wan into Boba Yellow. That is a bad
Yeah.
And by the way, this list is not updated for me either. This looks like a testing list I did, but you want 3 open fires in your main deck if you're playing turret.
Yeah, but and I think just be careful. Play against those kind of 2-drops similarly to you would against aggro, just to make sure you don't let the A-wing kill a cartel spacer, for example. You want to be attacking into the A-wing rather than the other way around. Same with Sabine into Crafty Smuggler. Just don't let them get the easy kills.
All right. Villain blue-green. Krennic's Idens can be help. This is a top cut from one of the later days.
This is a day 3 list that they didn't do a top cut for.
Oh yeah.
So it went 5 and 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
But good list. I mean, this is a deck you'll see. How are you attacking villain blue-green?
I sound like a broken record here, but don't let them get easy laser techs. So yeah, don't let me get easy laser tech.
It's an
and
important
just
broken
be-
record. I mean,
Oh,
be,
yeah.
be conscious of super laser tech and villain green because
And yeah, be the aggressor. If they're on Krennic, then you probably do want to kill Krennic because he's healing too much and he's giving the Steadfast a chance to ECL and kill you. And yeah, if you get an up tempo, disrupt their ramp, you're going to be in a good spot. And then probably see the game out with a change of heart.
Yeah, that healing
I've
from
used-
Krennic himself can make matches right there.
Yeah, I think you do want to remove him, that or at least no good to be dead or something. And yeah, I think this is one of the most common matchups where I've used change of heart because there's just things like reinforcement walker that you're just really close to winning the game. They've got reinforcement walker out, and you're like, I don't want it to heal, and also I'd quite like the 6 damage. And then they have to worry about it, or it's just a good swing, change of heart, something like that.
Makes sense.
So yeah,
right,
that's
so
me.
what are you thinking about as far as villain blue green? Sometimes called soft control. I think I've heard.
Yeah, so
called
I
villain
think
blue
one of the weaknesses of that deck is the quality of the space units. So that's definitely something that that you really want to be pushing as your winning condition. Obviously, there's a lot of removal, so going wide and trying to push damage as quickly as possible through space is the ideal line of attack. You do have to have a response to the Star Viper, so that the usual play would be to ECL your turn 1 play with Star Viper, and then he starts healing a lot. So again, Falcon and Gunship play a big role to be able to clear that space lane and prevent healing. I think Krennic is the most annoying card in this deck because over the course of the game, he probably heals 6 to 8 if you don't kill him, and killing him feels like a big setback because you have to spend 7 damage that you would have otherwise dealt to a base to actually deal with him. But I think that 7 damage dealt to Krennic usually gets traded.
Reaps
So
its rewards.
it's definitely it pays off if you can do it. So again, Rogue Operative trying to threaten that play, slow them down as much as possible with healing and trying to push as much damage. I think the For a Cause has been a very difficult card to in this matchup because unless it's finishing the game, it feels like you deal 3 or 4 damage with For a Cause, and then they just play Vigilance, heal 5. So it's kind of like unless it's a final blow, it's very difficult card to play and get some benefit from it. So it's definitely a difficult matchup. But there are some lines that you can take and increase your chances of winning.
Right. Either of you running into a Luke green?
Not on the tournament, but I've played quite a few. It's quite an enjoyable matchup for Boba Yellow.
And why?
It's those it's just the kind of slightly slow units in the middle game.
Yeah, I played a lot of Luke Green. They've got very little that you play and has an immediate on-game effect, and they don't have huge amounts in the way of tricks, really, do they? That just do something right then and there.
I think it's the 5 resource turn. There's nothing particularly strong to do then, and whilst Boba's doing the crazy things, and then when by the time Luke comes out, he's trying to do too much. He's only 1 unit and he can't claw it back quick enough. Even giving shields to things is relatively slow because you need to get something out to give it a shield to then attack. And by that point, Boba's just got a fire spray out and hit you for 5. Whilst also hitting you for whatever else is on board.
All right. Go ahead, Seb.
No, I was just going to say that I do find the Luke Green and Han Green matchups quite similar from the Blonde Sabine perspective. So I think the presence of Bright Hope is quite a big factor there. I think that the main difference is that Luke Green is a little bit slower, but he heals a lot more. So, but I think the kind of units that you have to deal with and the threats that you have to deal with are quite similar.
All right, so we had several requests, or I did, of people looking. Actually, I had somebody last week looking for, hey, is there something that attacks, the entire meta, from multiple perspectives? So there you go. I mean, I think that's the primary decks you'll see. You can always run into it. Let's talk just briefly about tournament prep. How did you guys get ready for this sucker?
I kind of decided which tournament to go to a while ago because there aren't that many big ones in the UK. So I kind of built up to it for a while. So I've kind of been playing the same deck and tweaking it for a couple months. So I think in the past month I've been playing quite a few games online. I've been playing in the Take the Initiative League just to get some competitive games in on a fairly regular basis. And yeah, just kind of keeping up with the meta development and following YouTubers such as yourself, just to make sure I'm aware of what I might come across and how I'm going to want to play those matches. Because I'm not going to have time to practice all of them, but I need to know what's going on, to what to be sort of mentally prepared for.
Watching the late night gaming masterclasses has been an invaluable piece of my research, I'll say.
Yeah, those are really helpful. People talk about the specific lines that they take. It's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and that all credit goes to the guests like you guys that are sharing your knowledge here. I mean, I think it's good. It's a good community. I think, Seb, you mentioned KTOD before.
Yeah, that's right. I think that was very pivotal community for being able to raise as a player and learn how to play game and find my ways and figure out how I want to get better at this game, and being able to play hundreds of games online, kind of discuss the bad matchups, the lines that we can take, and learning from other players, reading their reports, listening to all the podcasts, whether that's the deck that I'm playing or deck that I'll be playing against, knowing how to beat them. Whatever content was available, I think I've absorbed it all and tried to to put it all together into something that gives me a chance to perform well.
Yeah, no, and I think it's about reps, and I think we're trying to do this to make people better. Everybody likes to win. Probably feels pretty good to get the mad.
I wouldn't know. How does it feel, Mike? Seb?
It's very good. It's still a bit surreal having won. It doesn't feel quite for real yet. It's a bit strange.
Yeah, now you're famous on YouTube.
There you go.
And then let's talk about it a little bit too. I mean, how's the community over in England? You guys have locals going on with places to play too?
So we've had about 20, 25, 27 odd store showdowns take place in the last 4 weeks. The United Kingdom is approximately the size of Texas. So in terms of travel, it's a lot easier for us than it is for the Americans, I'm sure. It's like an hour, 2 hours drive to get to most of the events within a radius of the central parts of England at the very least. It's a bit tough for the north, further south. There's a core of people who are within an hour or two of the centre of England, of Birmingham, who will travel to most of the places around, whether it's Cheltenham, whether it's Nottingham, whether it's Birmingham, whether it's High Wycombe, these sorts of places. And because of that, you see the same sort of people time and time again. OJ did very, very well on day 3. Dave Hoyland did very, very well on day 3, and these are locals that we've met and played against. So we're all kind of feeding off each other and learning to get to know each other in a way. The UK Discord is a great place to talk to all these people as well and find out what local games are going on.
And if you shoot me that Discord, I'll link it there.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Yep, that's a free one. I actually am the admin for the Wisconsin one. We tend to go state by state over here. But I think that actually connecting with your local players is very important, because one thing is that the meta may not be the same. I mean, what I do,
Absolutely.
I kind of expect what I'd see, and I've made a couple of good calls as to what I would see in Milwaukee. That helps.
And it just takes the one person turning up with a random deck you've never seen before to throw your best of one matchups out the window.
Cheers, IG88. See, now you got me doing it. I just dropped cheers unintentionally. Okay. Well, we're putting this out on both channels, so whether you're watching on Late Night or Unlimited Power.
Indeed.
Thanks for going. Any final tips to take us home for the people? Let's say for the person going to Gencon, which is going to have the exact same format, I imagine, because it's Fantasy Flight 2. I know it's 128-day person caps right now. we've asked whether it's possible to increase them. Fantasy Flight hasn't responded, but what are your final words of wisdom? We'll start with Seb.
I think the thing that I've learned that had the biggest influence on my playstyle was reps. Being able to take a deck and really learn it, play it for 200, 300 games, really changes how you see different matchups and lines you can take. I couldn't recommend more. Just learning the deck that you feel comfortable with, making sure that you do those reps, and then claiming all the glory.
Mike, take us home.
Play a deck you enjoy. It makes it so much more fun on the day. And yeah, if you get a lot of practicing with the deck, you can kind of just get in the zone when you're playing. And yeah, if you're starting from someone else's deck online, try and make some tweaks, make it your own. It makes it a lot better to play. And yeah, every time you lose, just try and think about what went wrong, what you could have done better, and you'll just gradually improve that way.
All right, Mark, any final thoughts from across the pond? I appreciate you reaching out to these guys and getting this set up.
No worries, and thanks, Loopy, for hosting and letting this go ahead. Much appreciated. I'm doing what I'm doing because I want this game to succeed. I want it to keep going for as long as possible. I want people to connect and play and take part in as many events as possible, play as many new people as possible, keep it all going and enjoy it. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing ultimately. So here's to that. Here's to the game.
Yep, and as we grow the worldwide community, I mean, I hope that you guys continue with it. I mean, there is something called Worlds, and it is Worlds. I played in the last Destiny one. I had I played against French, Spaniards, a couple of Aussies. There's content creators all around, so maybe we'll catch you whenever that happens. They're very guarded as to when it will be. I have some
yes
guesses, but nothing beyond. All right, this was a great interview. If you've watched this far, you're my hero, and Loopy signing off.
Oh yeah, cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks.